request is you comply. Compliance will be rewarded.
Hello and welcome back to Eyes Pried Open, the show where Sebastian here shows me movies that I would not have seen otherwise. Today we cover Akira Kurosawa's...
Hold on, I have been trying to put this freaking...
That's fine. We can... We're going to leave that in. Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, released in 1990. Sebastian showed me it because I had been having lots of very vibrant, very crazy dreams. Somewhere I get shot, somewhere I run into people from my past. So he said, hey, why don't we give this one a shot?
Yes.
Sebastian, you had a dream last night.
I had a dream last night, which I would like to share. I was in a grassy field. I was about to cross a bridge, and then an old man stopped me, and he said this. A wonderful bird is the pelican. His bill holds more than his billiken. He can take enough in his beak, enough food for a week, but I'm damned if I see how the hell it can.
What? So you dream in like perfect... What do they even call those? It's like a type of poem, right?
Limericks.
Limericks, yeah.
Well, it's much easier to dream like that when you make it up.
I fucking hate you, dude.
Yeah, I just made it up, but I thought it'd be funny.
You had me there for a second. I genuinely thought, like, if anyone dreams this way, it's Sebastian. So yeah, released in 1990. The only thing that I saw about this film was when you told me that you wanted to do this, I Googled it, and I saw a picture of a boy running through a flower field, and little did I know the dark context that was. So that was fun to see. Oh, that's the image I saw on Google. What were your initial thoughts before you even watched this movie a year ago?
I had heard about this movie for a long time. This movie is directed by Akira Kurosawa, as you already mentioned, the great Japanese filmmaker. I think that's a good, easy statement to make. He's probably the best Japanese filmmaker of all time. He's one of the best of all time, period. I had seen a lot of his movies. This one always stood out as a curiosity. I thought the premise was ingenious. Just the idea of an anthology film about a bunch of dreams. What a great premise. And when I saw it, it was just transfixing. It was just amazing. It was so weird, so vivid, so many cool ideas, very drawn out, very long, but also breathtaking at the same time.
Drawn out and breathtaking are probably the two first descriptions that I would use to describe this. Usually I had a structure that I wanted to go about with this podcast, but because this is an anthology, I had to completely fucking, I can't even say these were the main characters, So I actually looked up the one guy that is the main, he's kind of like the main character throughout a lot of these. His casting, in the credits, it says translated to English, which I guess is...
That makes a lot of sense.
Me, meaning Kurosawa, because this is based on dreams that he had throughout his life.
Yeah, that's even though it's not specifically said, I always interpreted it as most of these characters, except for the soldier one and the blizzard one. I interpreted all of the main characters of each short film as Akira Kurosawa himself, as if he is experiencing this dream.
Yeah. So the lead man, his name was Akira Tairo, and I'm probably pronouncing that horribly wrong, but his performance was stellar in each of them. He went from being in a war movie to being in a post-nuclear fallout, preparing to die, to just a wanderer through a windmill village, and he captured that all perfectly.
What's interesting about this movie is I don't necessarily think of it as a performance film. I think of it more as a film where the environments speak for themselves, and the kind of the dialogue speaks for itself. like when the direction speaks for itself.
Yeah.
When it's a lot of just characters wandering in these crazy, absurd, but also beautiful situations, or sometimes not so beautiful. But in imagery wise, it's always like beautiful scenes and such.
Yeah. There was one standout that I wanted to point out, which was the child
In the
in
peach tree second.
the peach orchard. He fucking killed it, man.
Oh my god.
You know, like the point where he just starts breaking down and crying
Makes me
because
think-
these mystical beings like judge him for something that his family did. Like,
Yeah.
how old do you think the kid? He was like maybe like 7, 6 type shit.
Yes.
Like, how do you get a kid to cry like that? Besides like slapping him on the arm, you know?
That's what I was thinking.
Like-
That's what, when you see a kid cry like that, you just have to think, it's like, did the director just like fucking like like I don't know, put a gun to his mother and say he's like, hey, you better show some fucking tears.
I never know. Like, working with children must be so hard because you kind of got to roll with like how they're feeling that day.
That whole setup is really interesting. I mean, just like from a directing standpoint, we're just having a bunch of grown adults in these like all white makeup, and they're just yelling at this child, and it's just like it must have been a fascinating thing to film, and then to see that dance afterwards, it must have been like just a weird ass thing to just to be there on set to experience that whole thing.
A lot of it is actually based on Japanese folklore. So to them, like, these are like their Robin Hood and their like Sleeping Beauty type of thing. So to them, like, it's like, oh, it's that, you know?
Yeah, that's what you figure. And I love that the movie, it's not like afraid of the fact that Americans might see and might not understand it. Like it just goes in, you know, without explaining anything really, you know, and like it just, I mean, like you said, we don't really know what these characters are, but we don't mind. It's just like it's a fascinating thing to watch, even if you don't have the full context of of growing up in Japan or understanding these stories.
That is a testament to Kurosawa's just filmmaking in general.
Yeah.
Let's move on to like the visual choices. What did you think of the movie visually?
Well, that's the strongest element of this movie, I would say.
I have to agree.
Is because it's not a character focused journey. It is about kind of these different stories, and each short I think has its own visual language, and a visual language that's very dynamic and great. He's not a person who loves to move around the camera too much. He's more of a static filmmaker, but he creates beautiful images, and his movement, even if it's little, it's subtle, and it enhances the movie every time he does it.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of different flavors of the same style. You know, it's like you got like these different flavors of ice cream, but you know they're from the same shop. If that makes sense.
I think the best one is the in terms of just the visuals, it's the Apocalypse one.
Really?
Where not the Apocalypse? I'm sorry, the one where Hiroshima. The volcano one.
Oh, that was a nuclear power plant.
That was nuclear power plant. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm going a little crazy. But the kind of red tint that's over everything, and there's kind of alarming sense of doom that's like preceding the entire film. I was just like from just a visual standpoint, it's fantastic.
Yeah. My gut reaction while we were watching was I said that every shot felt like this carefully crafted picture. You know, like you could it felt like Kurosawa was like a photographer before he was a filmmaker, and it reminded me a lot of Kubrick's work because he also has that thing going on for him. I don't know about Kurosawa if he was a photographer, but I would bet money on it just based on this.
Just the simple opening of the tunnel short film, where we see him walking through the tunnel, and we see this beautiful silhouette of him, and then the frame is perfectly framed around the circle of the tunnel. Yeah. It's exquisite. It's extraordinary. Yeah. You know, it's a fantastic thing to look at.
There's so many moments like that. I loved his use of angles and leading lines, like specifically like when I'm going back to the peach orchard, but when the kid is like going up like the grass steps, I was like, oh wow, like just the structure of this shot is so beautiful. And then there was another one in the peach orchard where they kind of like, it wasn't like a whip pan, but it was a quick pan between like him discovering the orchard to like him being across the woods from the girl that he thought he saw, or he did see, but they didn't believe him. I like I liked how alive the camera felt. You know, like it felt like he was very comfortable with the imperfections. Like there was
Yeah,
a
there was
lot
a lot of shake cam, a lot of
Yeah.
like kind of
And-
like when there was like a camera movement, there was like a wobble to it.
yeah.
Even sometimes when the camera was supposed to be just still, there was a kind of a little wobble to it.
And you have a thing with shaky shots. So I'm wondering why you think it works in this film.
What is it? I don't like when there's like uh like like a filmmaker has purposely decided to make a shaky film where it's like to emphasize the intensity of a situation. They decide to make it shaky and have the camera follow on the characters in kind of a shaky motion. And honestly, it's not even like a thing where it's like I have like I think like it's bad for a filmmaker to choose that choice. It's just something I personally don't like, just from personal experience with all that. But I mean, for this one, it's not really trying to show it's not trying to create an intensity. What it's trying to do is, I feel like it kind of adds to, it's weird because the movie is so surreal. It kind of adds to the realism, to where it's like if everything was like a perfect gliding and perfect smooth motion, it would almost feel like too unreal. Where it was like if you see little imperfections, if you hear little shakes, it does feel like there's like I don't know, it adds like a humanity to the filmmaking.
There was a lot of just wide shots in it. Like there was very rarely did we get the typical like shot, reverse shot.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we actually did get some of those, it felt more impactful.
Yes, it's
know?
interesting though. It's a kind of like a thing of just like, it is an intentional choice. I'm not trying to take away from the filmmakers, but it also is just a thing. I think back then they were less concerned with doing like the side to side shots. I feel like if we make a film nowadays and we need to have a conversation,
That's
it's like,
coverage.
yeah, it's like it's a given. It's a given. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
got to have, one shot from this angle, one shot from that angle, one, medium. But back like then, I don't know, they just had like this weird energy where they could just be like, let's just shoot the entire thing in a medium. Why not? And I do kind of miss that. I mean, there's kind of just like a enjoyable quality about like the simplicity of it. It's like when you watch it, it's like I don't miss the fact that there's like different angles. Like shit, look at how we're shooting it. Like one angle there, one angle there, one angle there.
Yeah.
It was like they didn't feel like they needed that.
They were very intentional. I mean, it also goes back to like what you said when we were watching the film, where they couldn't just shoot willy nilly.
That's another factor.
They had finite film that they had to say print on the one that they liked, and then they had to go run into the lab. And sometimes shit would happen in the lab where they would use too much of a chemical, or the book that you had me read in Making Movies, like he was talking about
Sidney Lumet.
Thank you. He was talking about how one time, like just on the way back from the lab, like there was a car accident, so they lost all the footage. I'm like, gee, like, I mean, I guess that can happen nowadays, but there's a much smaller margin of error when you're just taking a hard drive or an SD card and importing it into your computer,
Yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks to the difference of filmmaking back then to today. I mean, unfortunately, we never got to see what Akira Kurosawa would have thought of digital cameras. He never lived that perspective. But for us,
it's a leisure.
I mean, there's a leisure to it. We can just shoot till our faces are blue. For them, they had to be very specific about the shots they wanted to get. That could have meant that could have made you a lazier filmmaker, where you're just like, well, I'm only going to get the exact, like the most minimal shots I need with the most minimal movement because that's all I need. But I mean, I think Kurosawa took that as a challenge. He was like, well, if I can only get these limited number of shots for these number of hours, how do I make each shot look so beautiful, so amazing, Right. And fuck if he fucking succeeded. I mean, just this is his first Kurosawa film.
Yeah,
that's a big thing.
It's funny because you showed me this, and I asked you midway through the movie. I was like, "Is this a weird choice for me to start with Kurosawa?" And you're like, "Yeah."
It really
and you did the
was.
same fucking thing by showing me
Asteroid
City.
Well, I didn't know that going into it. I thought he had seen other ones because like who hasn't seen a Wes Anderson movie?
A lot of people haven't seen a Wes Anderson. He's relatively still like.
He's a very indie guy, but
Yeah.
his movies, I don't know. But with a Kurosawa, he is known. He's like, in terms of blocking and camera placement, he is one of the best.
Yeah.
On God, I think Kurosawa's story is just a fascinating one. Because I mean, it's a kind of the thing is like, I don't know who's watching us, you know? It's like if someone's watching us who's like a film buff like me, then they're like, oh, Kurosawa, I know him. But if someone's like, no, like I don't know, majority of people aren't, then there's like a lot of people who are just like, who the fuck is this guy? So just to give a little bit of backstory, Kurosawa was this filmmaker from Japan who, in the 50s and 60s, had this extreme control over his films. He would make a film every year. They would all be masterpieces. And then towards the 70s, he lost that control. He tried to make movies in America. It failed. And then he tried to kill himself. Like, he was so depressed that he felt like he couldn't make any movies anymore. He tried to kill himself. He failed, luckily. And then what happened was American filmmakers who were inspired by him took it upon themselves to produce his later half of his films, which are a lot of the later ones are considered his best ones, including Ron, amazing samurai war film, adaptation of the Shakespeare play King Lear, and what is it? Another one is is this one, Dreams, which is produced by Steven Spielberg. If you watch the movie, it starts with the Warner Brothers logo because, I mean, they produced it even though it's a Japanese movie. It's crazy, but it's amazing he got this second life as a filmmaker.
And I think that the fact that he was clearly mentally ill, you know, to drive himself to such an extreme, like I think you kind of see that reflected in his work. I mean, I've only seen the one film, but there's so many themes of I mean, the first story starts off with a mother sending her child to go kill himself for something he did wrong. You know, that's a perfect transition because I want to get into talk. So typically we would go through and we would start with Act 1, move into Act 2, and then Act 3. I couldn't fucking do that for this one. You threw a cog in my machine. So now I just have like every fucking story written out here. So yeah, we'll go one by one.
I want to start with the first story because it's like, I love to show my friends films that they have no context for. They don't know anything about the movie going into it.
You're a fucking asshole for that.
Yeah, and I was a kind of nervous about this one. I mean, I imagine Ryan was a bit nervous. He didn't know what kind of film he was getting into.
I wasn't nervous. I was confused.
Yeah, because, well, what was it? It's like, it's not American. It's Japanese, you know. Our cultural, like, thoughts on Japanese films can get really weird to us Americans. You know, so, like, there's this kind of thought. I was like, well, what kind of film am I in for? And then immediately, the first short film is a kid seeing a fox's funeral. No, a fox's wedding. Fox's wedding.
And we Sunshine Through the Rain, it was called.
Yes. And we just see all of these like people walking with this fox makeup. And then you asked me, I was like, wait, so is it like, are they literally foxes or are they supposed to be people with masks on? And we're just like, who fuck knows?
I thought it was great because it set the tone for the entire picture. You know, these slow, drawn-out sequences. They're moving between these different scenes with little to no connection.
I mean, but also, I mean, that's a dream for you.
Yeah,
you know?
no. That is like I didn't even have to get to the second one to be like, oh, this is what this film is going to be. And then you have the ending with a very vague or no resolution whatsoever. You know,
it was actually a really good one to start. The first two are really good ones to start off with because we see him as a kid at first, then we see the like adult dreams, and it's like the kids ones are very kind of like surreal and crazy, and you don't exactly know what's going on. And then as you get into the other ones, it becomes more of a deeper meanings, like kind of like hit you with these like bigger themes.
I just think it was more direct in its storytelling. Yeah. You know, I could still sniff out the theme in like this one to me was about childhood innocence and the repercussions of that, even though they might not be unfair. You know, like it was like he was being punished for being curious. You know, which is natural in a child, and I just thought that was, I don't know, I just thought that was a beautiful thing to be able to capture in like a 15-minute short. You know?
And that final shot is just fucking breathtaking. Yeah. It is just amazing. Yeah.
He's been sent to talk with the foxes underneath the rainbow or kill himself, and I was like, oh, that's the picture that I saw on Google. That's
it's like the kid going to kill himself.
crazy fucking context.
Because like the mother, the mother is like, well, most people don't get, the foxes usually don't forgive you, so probably gonna fucking die. It's funny her giving the sword, like the little knife thing, and just being like,
yeah,
it's just basically.
Yeah, that was fucking.
By the way,
very matter of fact.
To kind of go along with my it's not really a theory. The idea that all these people are like the main characters of each short is literally a Kurosawa. This is a fun fact. There's a name on the door of the house in the first one, and we can't read it because obviously it's in Japanese. But the English translation is Kurosawa. It's like it literally says Kurosawa on the door. So
That's funny.
If there's any like obvious it's like, all right, this is literally just like this guy. I mean, this is what he said. He said that these are literally dreams he had. Now, if they actually are dreams he had, or if this was just a vehicle to tell these stories, I don't know. But it definitely does feel like a dream someone would have and someone would remember, for sure.
Yeah, specifically those dreams that he had more than once. I
Yes.
think he said. And let's move on to the next one. The Peach Orchard.
This one starts what I would say is a theme that kind of runs through all of them, is that it has a message it wants to get across, and it's very clear about the message, but also it decides to really drag out like the last part of the part of the short to like really hammer home the message. In this one, it's the dancing. We just see these people dancing after the main thing is done.
What do you think is the message?
Like don't fuck with nature, don't fuck with nature. Stop fucking cutting down trees. Stop cutting down peach trees. I don't like
this
peaches.
is like the Japanese version of the Lorax, basically.
Yeah. Fucking jeez. Dude, have you ever had a peach?
Yes, they're fucking amazing.
I don't like peaches. When I saw the peaches trees cut down, I was like, fucking good. All right.
What? You don't like peaches?
No, I don't like
Maybe
peaches.
you had a shitty peach. Okay, maybe it wasn't ripe enough yet. Like that to me, that's like saying like you don't like bacon. Like everybody likes bacon.
Peaches? Bacon's better than peaches.
Dude, peach. That's like fucking nature's candy.
Oranges or pineapples, nature's candy.
Yeah, well, a lot of fruit is there's different fucking flavors of candy, Sebastian.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, was it?
What is this? Your black licorice?
Yeah, I was fucking about to say that peaches are my black licorice. Damn it!
Yeah,
I'm so
fuck
mad that you said that before.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
I like literally. I was like, what's the word licorice?
You did this to me like 2 podcasts ago, so I'm glad that I was able to beat you to the punch on that. To me, the theme this time was being sad about things that are out of your control. Being sad about things that your parents have done or that your institution may have done. Like the whole thing of him he said to the higher beings, I don't know what else to call them, that
it was a really beautiful scene.
Yeah, he wept.
Yeah, I
because
love
they cut the trees.
I love I love that little dialogue exchange where he's crying and she's like, huh? She's like, oh, he's crying. He feels guilty. He's like, he's crying because he likes how peaches taste. He's like, I can go to a store and buy peaches. I am sad because the orchard was beautiful and they cut it down, and that sucks.
What a deep thought for a 6-year-old to have, or a 7-year-old to have,
Yeah. Nowadays, it would just be like, I don't know, they're in Fortnite.
Bing bong, fuck your life,
Fuck your life, yeah.
The next one was my least favorite.
It was definitely my least favorite too. That one,
the Blizzard.
The Blizzard really dragged. I mean, that was the one where maybe you'll have a different interpretation. I had a hard time figuring out what it was about because it was kind of like watching it was like an evolution,
Oh, but movies aren't about figuring it out, Sebastian. They're about feeling. I thought that
Depends
was
on the movie.
Depends on the movie.
Yeah.
I thought that's what all the movies are supposed to be. I mean, that's why.
Depends on the movie. These ones have specific allegories, but okay. So basically, we see the whole thing is one big drawn out sequence. This film.
We had a joke about like, what does this look like in the script? Just like one man grunts, next one, next one, sludges through the snow.
Yeah. So it's about these guys. They're sludging through the snow. This one guy is really determined for them to get back to camp. The other ones are really tired, and then he goes to them, and it looks like. Well, first of all, it takes like fucking 5 minutes to get to that point. I just said in like 2 seconds, but it just takes like 5 minutes to get there. But then they all are like falling asleep. I thought they were dead. You know, they look dead. Like he just goes to them and they're not responding to him, trying to get them to wake them up. And then he falls to the snow.
That's like the rule. Is like once you stop walking, that's it.
Then he falls to the snow, and then a lady comes who I interpret it as like a death-like figure, like she's death and she's collecting them, or an angel or something like that. But
there's probably something in Japanese folklore that we don't.
Yeah,
understand.
but still, we can only use our interpretation,
right?
Of course. But so yeah, she tries to collect him. She tries to grab him to the afterlife, and he refuses. He keeps like pushing back, and then she just goes away. And so I figured the message like, oh well, he's gonna live, but the rest of them are dead. And then the blizzard stops, and then they're all just alive, and then they're all happy, and they all just go into the camp, and that's the end of it. And so I'm sorry, Kurosawa, I just don't get that one. I just don't get what you're going for with that one.
This was the only one that I couldn't come up with a theme for. I guess it was just like
Perseverance?
Yeah, never give up.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't skip it. If I watched the movie again, I wouldn't skip it. But
I would. Fuck the blizzard. The next one was the one that you specifically, when the title came up on the screen, you were like, "Oh, this is a good one." You know, It was The Tunnel.
The Tunnel.
Yeah.
This is it's like, I mean, what is it? It's not subtle. The message of the thing, and this goes for all of them. It's not exactly the most subtle thing in the world in terms of what it's trying to tell you, but it's a good message and it works. You know, you don't need I don't need everything to be like some kind of subtle masterpiece that you have to kind of interpret. You know, sometimes it's good to have like an obvious message, and this one did have an obvious message. We start off with this man is walking through a tunnel. Well, first he meets a dog, and there's like a lot of ADR dog noises because they couldn't get the dog to bark on set,
I guess. Yeah, and that was one of the aspects that I thought like it really helped drive home that like dream-like feel.
Yeah,
where the dog kind of went away for a while with really no explanation, and then it came back, and like that has happened to me in dreams where it's elements come and go. And
then he goes to the tunnel. He turns around and he sees a dead soldier. And yeah, the dead soldier, he has to explain to the soldier that he's dead. And we see the soldier distraught and just horrified about the fact that, and he slowly comes to term with death. And I mean slowly. He comes to term to
he
death
fights
very
it.
slowly, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks over, he sees the house, and then he walks back in. And then what I think is a great reveal, suddenly a bunch of soldiers come out dead and stuff, and that's where I was like, oh, it's a great visual because you don't expect it, you know. It's like you don't,
like coming from the dark tunnel. That was
just hundreds of them. And then we find out that this guy was some kind of general, and he led all these people to death, and you figure out the meaning. It's about kind of like the PTSD of a soldier who comes back, and kind of the grief that you feel when you're the survivor's guilt. He has severe survivor's guilt. You
said that the message was pretty obvious in this one. What do you think the message was?
It's about, I think, like trauma and just like I said, like survivor's guilt of being in that situation. I mean, also it might be a bit more like critical of like the Japanese government and stuff, because it's like, it's about the fact that he led these people to death. So it's not just a guilt of his survival.
Knowing that it was a losing fight.
Yeah, it's not just like a guilt of survival, but there's also, he says at one point, there's like the war was pointless and stupid and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy because the whole thing is that these are dreams that Kurosawa has actually had. So I'm led to ask the question, what in Kurosawa's subconscious manifested the scenario for him to walk through, you know?
Yeah.
And if I had to take a wild guess, you can kind of translate to, all right, he's a director, a leader, right? The sergeant, also a leader. This could be something relating to like previous productions that maybe did not live up to the expectations or the hype that he wished they had.
Yeah.
And he feels like he had led this whole team of people to what he views as death.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also just like a factor. He never served in a war, but he lived through a lot of wars, and he lived in Japan, so he probably knew a lot of people who probably died in war. So there's, even if he didn't personally have that feeling of that soldier where he had that guilt, he probably did feel the pain of just so many people of his culture, of his period, dying to a war that was ultimately, what was the point of it, type thing. Yeah.
The next one was my favorite.
Oof, it might be my favorite. I like the title.
Crows.
Ooh, I mean, it's like, for us, the artistes.
The guy steps into the painting, fucking Blue's Clues style. He blue skidooed into Van Gogh, which was amazing. And
what's funny is Akira Kurosawa's, again, one of the, like, in terms of filmmakers, highest class filmmakers. So I was trying to keep track. It's like, I wonder what things are we going to reference, in this episode. So it's like, in our Kurosawa episode, you have referenced Blue's Clues. So.
I loved Blue's Clues as a child. My acting debut was actually me. So we had this assignment that we had to do in English class freshman year of high school, and we had to. They called it like a parody, but this is not what a parody is. Basically, we had to take two pieces of media and mash them into one.
They called it a parody so they wouldn't get sued.
Right. So we read this short story called, I think it was called The Greatest Game, about this guy who lives on this island that the waters are very rough, and he draws people in and their boat crashes, and he hunts them like that's what they call.
I know The Greatest Game. It's a very famous story.
Well, I'm explaining it not for you, for fucking the viewers, dick. But basically, I was like, all right, what if Steve from Blue's Clues was the hunter and Blue was being hunted, So...
How old were you?
It was freshman year of high school.
Oh, okay.
So like
I thought it was a thing. I thought this was like an elementary school thing.
No.
I was like, that's fucking dark.
Yeah, and I think I have a clip of it somewhere. If I find it, I'll play it. But
roll the tape, Johnny.
There's one clip of me. Mailbox dies. Spoiler alert. And I'm like on my knees going, Mailbox. No, listen. Look at me. Don't look at the light. Look at me. Just sing the song with me. Sing the song. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it comes, I wanna yell, Mail! Blue!
Okay.
But yeah, that was my acting debut.
We gotta find this.
Yeah.
We gotta uncover this.
So anyway, Crows.
Oh, remember we were talking about the Akira Kurosawa film?
We're allowed to have tangents.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're allowed to talk about your fucking trivia for minutes on end, I can take 3 minutes to talk about Blue's Clues.
No, it's funny. Okay, so Crows. First we start off with a shot of just this guy looking at a Van Gogh painting. And oftentimes they say when you look at a painting, you get transported in there. In this case, he literally gets transported in the painting. And what's interesting is just ignoring you. What's interesting is that the last two shorts were very dim color-wise. Of course, they were doing very heavy subject matter, so very like dark colors. But this one, it's like just fucking immediately. It's like he fucking went to Adobe Premiere, turned up the exposure.
That's not what I think. He was trying to emulate acrylic paint.
Exactly.
Acrylic,
no, I know exactly what he was doing, and it looks fucking amazing. It looks fantastic.
Very stunning. We haven't pointed out. Fucking Martin Scorsese
is in this movie.
Plays Van Gogh.
Yeah.
He's ginger. It's crazy.
Yeah,
he looks like fucking Bill Burr.
What's interesting is that Akira Kurosawa, apparently when he met Martin Scorsese in the 80s, way before they made this movie, his first thought was like, oh, this guy looks just like Van Gogh, which is just a fun fact that's like a very popular thing that people say, but to me, it just sounds like bullshit. Because if he really looked like Van Gogh, they wouldn't put all that fucking makeup on him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
I have a quote here. He goes, "A scene that looks like a painting doesn't make a painting. If you look closely, all of nature has its beauty." I just thought that was sick.
I mean, this short is like it hits on so many levels for me, just because one is just like Out of all the painters, Van Gogh is my fucking favorite. I mean, for one, his style is so
You have
unique.
a favorite painter?
Yeah, don't you?
No.
Fucking nerd. But
You're the fucking nerd. Favorite painter.
yeah, you don't have a fucking favorite painter. What is it? Yeah, I'm sure you don't have a favorite Renaissance artist either.
I know Da Vinci.
Da Vinci. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know fucking Da Vinci Resolve. That's the only Da Vinci you know. Anyway, the not only is his paintings great, but his story is really great about. And then they go into it like he chopped off his fucking ear for his self-portrait. He went to an asylum and shit. and
Well,
it's-
you got to say what he says.
Yesterday, I was trying to complete a self-portrait. And I just couldn't get the ear right, so I cut it off and threw it away.
I don't know why he's from New York. And
Just because they casted Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
But what's funny is the whole movie is in Japanese, and then in this segment when he goes into painting, they suddenly have a European thing. They're doing European. I don't know which.
It was Dutch.
It was Dutch, yeah.
Something.
And then suddenly the only English in the film. It's like you have to imagine everything Japanese up to that point. Then we get a bit of Dutch, and he's like, "Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I love arts,
It's amazing.
It's a real.
Yeah. This was beautiful. To me, the theme.
Well, what's really great is what happens after we see Scorsese, and then he chases after Van Gogh, and then suddenly he's literally running through the paintings.
Yeah.
And in terms of just a visual effect, it just looks fucking flawless. Like I don't even understand it.
Well, something that I pointed out when we were watching was that the hardest thing to get right is like the lighting, because that is something that will the viewer might not know that it's jarring, but you'll be like, oh, that doesn't belong there. But what they did was, it wasn't like they scanned a print of the art. It was like they actually had video of the painting, and they were lighting the painting in a way where the pieces of paint had depth to them, right? So the little shrivels, they were like lighter on one side and they were darker on the other, and they lit the actor that they, I don't know what method they used, but if it was modern, they chroma keyed them onto the painting, and it just meshes.
It does. There actually is behind the scenes footage of that. I'll show you that later. But
oh, please.
It's pretty amazing how it was done. It was actually George Lucas's effects company. ILM is the one who did it.
Really?
Yeah, George Lucas was a big fan of Kurosawa, and Star Wars is heavily inspired by a lot of the samurai films that Kurosawa made. And so it's kind of a he also produced Ran, so that's also kind of a full circle moment. But this is also like a full circle moment of him directly contributing to a Kurosawa's film in like the visual effects, which is pretty crazy to think about.
That's great. Yeah, for me the theme was about seeing the artist through his work in a quite literal sense, it's almost like you hear the artist's voice through the paintings, the same way that when you watch a Tarantino film, you hear Tarantino's voice through the dialogue, so I guess
maybe
that's
a little too much sometimes.
Maybe that's crazy coming from you. That's insane.
You can be critical of people you like.
Yeah. You're right.
Yes.
The next one,
Mount Fuji in Red. That movie,
that's short.
it's good.
Yeah, one of the most striking visuals, like
Yes,
you said in the beginning.
visually.
I thought the VFX aged poorly. Like there's
worse
just
there. It's kind of funny. It's like they put all their effort into the Van Gogh one. They're like, kind of, we can kind of half-ass this one.
Well,
but it doesn't really matter.
It didn't really take me out because it was within the context of, oh, this is a dream.
Well, what's really spectacular is even though the effects weren't the best, it's kind of crazy because every other short had like one or two characters in it, and then to see this one just have like so many extras running back and forth, and it's kind of like, oh shit, this is fucking crazy, and it really helps this kind of effect of just like a worldwide panic of like what would happen if this did happen, just complete nuclear devastation.
Definitely the biggest in terms of scale.
Yeah.
I love the lines about them talking about like, oh, like humans are so stupid, like it's this invisible thing that kills you, and they colored it just so you could determine which one kills you.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Was it so? The majority of the first we start with this chaos of all these people running around everywhere, trying to escape this like kind of nuclear disaster. They trying to escape the unescapable, basically. And then we kind of have this scene with like specifically this one guy, this woman with her 2 children, and this businessman. And it's where you're talking about where they're just kind of talking about the hopelessness of their situation. And there's actually something that I thought could have been like unintentionally hilarious, where the man in the business suit is just like, well, and he just kind of throws his glasses and he looks like he's about to jump into the water, and then they're all just like they stop him. I just think it would have been hilarious if the guy just didn't stop him. He's just like whoop, and he just jumped in, and then we hear a little goofy sound effect where he's like yahoo, yahoo. Yeah.
I wonder how that came out on the that probably peaked.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I do have that 32-bit audio now.
Like then, as the film progresses, we find out as this little short progresses, we find out the old man is like one of the people in charge of this, and it kind of gives us new outlook. And then they kind of just let him fucking die, and like they let him jump, and it's a really depressing film. I mean,
Did they let him jump, or I thought like
he kind of just jumps without them noticing.
Yeah,
but,
they turn their back on him, and he's like, "Well, now's my chance, fucking yahoo."
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting in terms of just Kurosawa's perspective. I mean, Japan has always had like a nuclear crisis, and he's actually made a couple of films about like the nuclear crisis in terms of just like a whole film, and it's kind of interesting to see that theme just encapsulated in just a tiny little short.
Yeah.
And he lived through the 60s, obviously. And it's like something a lot of people just like, I think we're still kind of like dealing with just the fact that we do have these nuclear weapons that can just fucking destroy us.
Not only that, but like nuclear fallout, nuclear waste, like
it's something that's always going to be prevailing, like just like threat.
I saw on the news the other day that the civilians of Japan are so concerned about nuclear waste in their water that the Japanese leaders had to publicly televise them eating flounder from like this river that was allegedly contaminated with
that's how bad
nuclear
it's
waste. And there's literally like, you know, the whole meme about like the Simpsons predicted it. There's like this scene where like almost the exact same scenario happens with Mr. Burns eating a fucking 3-eyed fish. It's fucking. It's not like I'm laughing about it in the sense of
it's
like
a horrible
the
situation.
Simpsons, but that situation itself is fucking horrifying.
Yes.
But yeah, the theme for me with this one was how civilians suffer for decisions that
The
people
government.
in more power have made for them.
And it's kind of like, it's interesting I think a lot of these shorts are pretty timeless. I don't see them ever getting really dated. And this one specifically is like this will always be an issue for us, unfortunately. So yeah.
In terms of relevance, at least. In terms of pacing, that's a completely other argument.
Yeah, with this one and then the following on The Weeping Demon, which we can transition to.
Perfect segue.
Like these both ones, it's like really like depressing things, and you like as you're watching the film, like that you're towards the end, and you just keep thinking, it's like, damn, is this gonna fucking end on a really down note? But that leads us to The Weeping Demon, which kind of feels like a weird kind of pseudo sequel to the other one, because it's like kind of like it feels like the aftermath of like the nuclear devastation of that one, and it like we see a character walking through it, and we see what the title promises is a weeping demon, just a demon who's really depressed and stuff, and he has a little horn on his head,
and he's scared that like he has one horn, and he's worried that the demons with 2 and 3 horns are going to come eat him, because there's a pecking order. Yeah,
they're going to just fucking kill him. But before that point, he takes the man who's just a Kurosawa, basically. Kurosawa to like these dandelions, and we just see these huge ass fucking dandelions.
Great set design.
Amazing.
Was that was practical, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Okay.
Another thing about
it
this
looks
movie.
so real.
Another thing about this movie, there's a lot of things where you're just like, how did they accomplish that? It's like things like, was that an accident? There's a beautiful shot where like the demon walks into the fog and the smoke, and then
we were both blown away by
the camera moves and it tilts like a bit, and we see from like the guy's perspective, we go like from behind his back, took a more medium shot, and the smoke perfectly like leaves the frame just as the demon starts talking again, and you just think it's like, was that an accident? How did they accomplish that? How do you time that? It just seems impossible.
You can just imagine the look on the DP's face where like it happened and he was like, you know, like so I can imagine the like I know when I get like a great shot when I'm doing photography and like the fucking adrenaline that runs through you,
Yeah.
like that, you know, on a very professional high budget level, that must be like heroin.
Yeah. And then from there he takes them to like the other demons, and they're just like next to a two big rivers of blood is the only thing I can describe it as. And it's just, you know, horrific, but it's also visually stunning. Again, another beautiful visual.
Yeah, like it was a red lake, but the sky was blue, so you have like this kind of like purplish muck going on, and you can only see the red in the demon's shadows that was like on the lake.
Yeah, and by the way, what I mentioned earlier is that a lot of these shorts, they really kind of drag on their ending, where they kind of like leave you just like these long shots that kind of last like a solid like 2 or 3 minutes. This one really just kind of ends. Like he just sees it, and then the guy just starts running away, and then we just like it's a really nice shot of like the camera following him as he's going down the mountains. Another
That
one
is
where
the longest fade to black I've ever seen.
yeah, that's like another one where
Period.
you're like, how did they accomplish that? But also says like that one's like, I was like, oh, that's a bit different. It's been more of an abrupt ending, you know? Yeah.
They're all abrupt endings.
Yeah.
They're all like just out of the fucking blue. But
That brings us to a final one.
yeah, Village of the Watermills. Visually, it's my favorite behind Crows.
Wow, okay.
I just love this like the.
It's kind of funny because
village
compared to the other ones, it's more there's a simplicity to it. It's not going for anything that crazy in terms of the visuals. It just feels like a small little town.
Yeah, but I love it for that. Like I love the green. You know,
Yes.
like it's funny because I'm very. I was gonna say I'm a very easy guy to please, but I'm not. I guess.
But if you see green,
Yeah, fucking. It was my favorite color up until very recently, where I started liking purple.
oh, that's weird.
That is actually the opposite of green on the color wheel. Fun fact.
So that means they contrast really well together.
Yeah. If you look at my photography, usually the highlights are a little bit green and the shadows are a tinge purple. Even when I do black and white, I give them a tinge of purple to separate them.
Green's also my favorite color. I think this short film really encapsulates kind of the overall theme that kind of connects all these shorts, because all of them in some way or another talk about death. Either like it's like basically the entire theme of the film, or if it's a small part of the film.
They all incorporate death some way or another.
Yeah, but the one I thought didn't was Van Gogh, but even in that one, there's a small, he pointed this out to me, there's a small little line where he says, he's like, I need to paint, you know, until I die, basically.
Yeah,
He's
my
like,
days are numbered.
My days are numbered. It's a real a true statement. And this one really encapsulates that, where it's just like, this one is just a guy talking to an old man. And the conversation, it talks about a few things. They first talk about, like, again, nature versus scientists, and obviously Kurosawa is a fucking tree hugger, but he God damn if he doesn't fucking love that nature, and God bless him for it. He talks about how science has kind of destroyed a lot of our natural, you know, like beauty, our nature and
There's
stuff.
a great line about like scientists think they're so clever and they come up with these inventions that just end up making us feel more sad in the end.
Yeah.
That line transcends generations. Holy shit.
Yeah. But then the conversation eventually divulges into like there's a funeral going on in the town, and it's a celebration. It's a happy thing because what is it he's saying is like why does a funeral got to be sad? You know, it's a celebration of like they did a good job. They worked hard in their life.
They lived a great life.
Yeah, now we're celebrating their life, and it's just it's a beautiful notion, and it kind of encapsulates the film and also makes death not seem such like a horrific thing. I mean, you have to imagine Akira Kurosawa's in his 80s at this point, you know, and a guy at that fucking age, he probably death is on his mind, you know, and it's nice that he has a good outlook on it at that point, you know. He didn't live that much longer after this movie, but it's nice that he at least had like a decent outlook on that in this film.
That's fucking deep, dude.
Yeah.
You said that, I remember when we were watching this, you said the thing about the person who died in the village was the old man's like first lover.
Oh
that
yeah,
went with
but
another guy.
that was a funny thing where it's like.
And you had this funny
Well,
interpretation.
hold on, let me tell the whole.
I was gonna
thing.
let you tell it.
Okay, yeah, just because it starts with like the old man says, it's like,
実は死んだばあさんはわしの初恋の人でなわしに失恋させて他のやつのところに嫁に行っちまったんだがねはあはあはあはあ
and then he gives, like he said she died when she was 99 years old, and he gives this weird laugh. He's like, ha ha ha, and I think it's just part of the theme where it's like death is not like always like an ugly thing; it can be a beautiful thing. But the way after he just said that, it just sounds like he's going, "I was like that fucking bitch. I'm glad she's fucking dead."
I thought that's a fucking funny
You fucking break my
interpretation.
heart, and I outlived you.
Yeah.
The guy's 104. Could you imagine living to 104? Do you ever think what age would you want to die?
Dude, I'm fucking 21. I got a lot of shit to do. You know, it's too early for me to say. I would like to live as long as
Possible?
I can. No, well, as long as I can keep doing the things that I like to do. You know, because there comes a certain age where it's just.
Do you
it
ever
just gets
like,
miserable? You
Yeah,
know?
I don't know. Like I've seen old people who get like really old, like their 90s and stuff. They don't look like they're enjoying life. You know?
Yeah, well, not in. Okay, my parents actually watched this documentary called The Blue Zones, and it's basically like imagine like this topographical map, right? It's all different colors, and the blue zones are where people live above 100. You know, like usually, you know, and they're very happy people. And they're not like slow and they get dull over time. No, they're fucking. Their brains are sharp. Their bodies work. You know.
Well, if you live to 100, that means you got some good genes on you.
Yeah, no. It is like just these specific parts of the world. It is not a genes thing. It is a lifestyle thing. It is how they go about living their life. It is because of how active they are. It is about how they keep themselves like functioning. There is almost no dementia in these places.
Do you think
Which
that
is crazy.
Now, do you think they spend like 6 hours a day behind a computer editing a
No.
podcast?
No. Shut the fuck up.
Because so I don't think we're gonna live there. I don't think we're gonna
No.
be in the blue zone.
I think we've crossed that threshold already. I think
Yeah.
that seed has to be planted early in your life.
Yeah, this shirt is the closest I'm ever gonna be into a blue zone. Yeah, I'm gonna
fucking kill me
say
sometimes.
I'd be happy with 91. You know,
Why
91's
91? Why not 90?
Well, because 90, then it's like too specific. It's too on the dot. You know, it's like if
Fucking
you-
Mr. Contrarian over here.
It's like if you live to 90, it's like a, I don't know. I wouldn't want to live to a year that's either a 0 or a 5. You know, but a 1. It sounds like I want to like die in a random day. So like what is it? I would like to live to 91 because that's like a random year. And then I wouldn't want like my birthday's in November. I would want to die around sometime in like June or July. That's like halfway through the year. And so it doesn't feel like oh, he was so close to being 92. You know, I wouldn't want that either.
You are a fucking asshole. You know that? You're.
What?
I want to die at this age, in this specific part of the. Who the fuck? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I know what I want my last
You
meal
know
to
what
be.
I want to. You know how I want to die? I want to die in my sleep, unaware.
Unaware.
I don't care what fucking age it is. I don't care what time. Fuck.
Oh no, that's very different. I want to die like I want to watch a movie and I want to have like the best meal ever, and then as the closing credits,
Sebastian, what do you think worked in this film?
What do you think? What do I think? The easier question is what didn't work. You know, that's the better.
That's what we're getting to next. So,
But I
what do
mean-
you think worked in this film?
Just the conception of it all, man. You know, it's just like the conception, the premise, the themes, the visuals, the acting. I mean, so much worked, and it's just like I think it really comes down to is just like what worked was the director. You know, you think like how do you make a film like this successful? Because there's a lot of films that are anthologies and whatever, but it had a unified vision to it. I mean, you look at a lot of like horror anthologies, and there's like a lot of horror anthologies that like each segment is directed by a different director. and they're like fine. Some of them are okay, but like they don't have like a vision to it because it's all just
Yeah.
like a bunch of different people doing different things.
Right. It's a
And this movie,
clusterfuck.
even though it's like a bunch of different shorts and they're all telling very different stories, having Akira Kurosawa behind the camera during all of them, giving it all a unified front, that's what makes it work.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree with you. This movie, you know, I'm very anal about structure. I need to have a clear, like, it helps my brain digest the information better. I know you differ from me in this aspect. You love avant-garde structure. You love Christopher Nolan. You love the way that Tarantino goes about some of his films.
I love when you kind of move things around, you kind of mess with it.
Yeah. This movie somehow got me to be less obsessed with that. And partially it was because the film was very upfront about what it was going to be. It's literally called Dreams, so it's going to feel like a bunch of dreams which are incoherent.
That really
And
is the perfect title for it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like an obviously it's perfect title, but like also there's just a factor of like the movie doesn't start with like a character going to sleep.
Yeah.
And then you like fade into you go into like their forehead and then it goes to black and then
That
it's,
would
like,
have been too much.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
I'm like is like the title is all you need. All you need to do is see the title, see it's called Dreams, and then you start seeing the shorts. And you're like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get exactly what this movie is going
Yeah.
for.
And the other thing is that it was an anthology, and that helped break up the pacing for me a little bit better. It was funny because we watched it at Sebastian's house, and he has an Apple TV, and so we were just getting like fucking like insurance ads in the middle of it, which is definitely not how Kurosawa would have wanted this to be watched, but it made it helped segment it for me a little bit better. You know, I could never watch a feature length.
It also gave us
with this pace, but
it also gave us space to like talk about the movie and stuff.
yeah.
Also, what was funny was that like I just like my favorite one was like we see this beautiful shot of the kid in the first short walking into like the sunset, and you see the rainbow and the grass is so green, and it's like encapsulates like the entire theme of the film in like one single image. And then you cut from that to Martha Stewart talking about kitchen supplies. Just
That was actually one of the ads that we got.
yeah, it was wonderful.
What do you think did not work in this film?
Two things distinctly did not work for the film for me. The pacing was, like you said, like because of how it's structured, it allows you to kind of forgive it. But damn, if there's not times where it's a little fucking slow, you know, it's like it's drawn out. And the other one is just some bad visual effects. That's it. Like in terms, like the very small complaints.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can kind of forgive the visual effects a little bit easier because you're limited by the technology you have at the time.
Yeah.
But I once heard someone say that movies aren't things as they happen, but they're as you remember them happening. And I think that Kurosawa was very literal in this one, where it was literally like the dream as he remembers it happening.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not as he's trying to create the dream as it happened, and not as he remembered it happening.
Yeah.
And there were scenes that just they took up way too much fucking time. You know, the one that sticks out in my head is during the blizzard. Yeah, where you just a bunch of men grunting up a fucking mountain. And there were points where I think it was done better and done worse. This was one of the worst examples, but I think a point where it worked was during the fox wedding, where we're told very few things. You know, we're told there are foxes having a wedding and they don't like to be watched. And the boy goes out to the woods and he watches the foxes have the wedding. And you have them walking through and you're just on edge the whole time. You're like, is it gonna get fucking discovered? And every once in a while, the fucking foxes, they go, whoo, you know, and they look a different direction. And it's like, oh shit, you know, like he was on the verge of getting caught. And that helps those long takes feel a little bit more dynamic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and even something like the tunnel, which is not necessarily suspenseful, like we don't know where the guy's going to die, but even though like it's drawn out, like you are, like it's really capturing the feeling. You know, there's like such like you just are kind of like the character is forced to be stuck in that kind of shitty feeling of just like, damn, all these fucking people fucking died, man. And there's nothing there's nothing he could fucking do about it, and it's just awful.
It's a very stunning visual. Who do you think this movie is for?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, what is it like? I don't think Kurosawa was sitting there with like a studio executive being is like, how is this going to be marketed? You know, who's this marketed for? I think this was kind of like, I imagine this like a fucking therapy session. You know, like I imagine him just
This
being,
podcast or the movie?
No, him. This podcast is going to need me to get therapy later on. But it does kind of just feel like something was like, I need to let out all of these thoughts, and I was able to do it in this film. And so, you know, like, I think it's similar to like what we said in Jackie Brown, where the film is really, you know, it's really for him. You know, it's really for him, and it was successful, and he created a beautiful piece of art that we can enjoy now, you know, thankfully.
This is, for me, if casual audiences will never enjoy this. This is not for your average moviegoer. This is for film buffs, film students. You will have your fucking patience tested, but god damn it, is it not worth it to just see some of the most stunning visuals that you will ever see put on a movie screen.
Let me ask you, Ryan. Do you go out of your way to watch foreign films?
No.
Does this film encourage you to try to be like, maybe I should go out and watch more like films from Japan or
Yes.
films from Kurosawa? Yeah.
100%. I feel like I've been missing out a little bit, you know, because I feel like the more I consume, the more inspiration I can pull from to try to put into my actual work. You know?
It is. Oh yeah, what you said?
Yeah, no, just the fact, just the I would never pay something like this, but visually, I was like, oh, I want something I shoot to look like this, to have this lasting impact on people.
Yeah, I mean that's like kind of the joy of watching different types of films. You open up your minds to different ways a story can be told, and I think to a lot of filmmakers out there, or a lot of young film students, they're kind of closed-minded in the sense that they just watch whatever's in the theater at the time. You know, or like watch like American films, and if you open yourself up to watch like foreign films and get over, like reading subtitles is a problem for you, just get over it. I mean, you know, there's such a world of amazing Kurosawa films, and I love that you love it so much, because that means I can show you like more. You know, I'd love to show you his other films from his filmography.
I guess we could watch Run next, or is it Ran?
Ran. That's a
Run.
pretty amazing one. I'd love to show you Seven Samurai.
Okay.
That movie's 3 hours 27 minutes.
It's fucking what?
3 hours 27 minutes.
You're out of your fucking mind. Can we watch it on fucking 2x speed?
You know, we'll save that one. We'll save it. But Ran seems like a good next one.
3 hours and what?
27 minutes.
That's longer than Oppenheimer.
Oh, yeah.
That's like Avengers Infinity. That's like Avengers Endgame type shit.
You can finish like Avengers Endgame and there's like still 21 minutes of the movie.
What are your final thoughts?
Fucking masterpiece. You know, just fucking masterpiece. I'm glad I saw it. You know.
I think it perfectly encapsulates what it feels like to dream. You know, which is exactly what they set out to do. I'm gonna give my rating for this, but I have to go about it a different way. Usually, I rate things in terms of watchability. Right? 7 means that you could watch it more than once. You know, you should go watch it several times, and every number after that is how rewatchable it is. A 6 means you should watch it once, and anything less than that is up in the air. If I rate this in terms of watchability, it would be like a 4. But I can't look at it that way, you know, because I have to look at it from like the film buff, the film student perspective. So in terms of uniqueness and style, it's an 8 out of 10 in my book.
I would also give it an 8 out of 10 for very different reasons, just because my metric of rating films is very different. I just have like a barometer. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel about how you should rate movies.
Shameless plug. We'll put that annotation up.
I have like my whole metric for it, but like for my basis, I would give it an 8 out of 10 as well. You know, so it's a pretty good movie. It's not even Kurosawa's best, but it's a masterpiece in itself.
All right.
I had another dream.
You know you didn't.
I had another dream.
Fuck you, you didn't.
The other day, and it was a man walking through a grassy field, and then he sees a road, and he's about to cross the road, but then an old man comes up. He's like, "Hey, Jackie Brown's a good movie."
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
That's fuck Jackie Brown. Fuck Jackie Brown.